What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Let's play a game. Imagine a country that bans movies, burns imported cheese, and threatens to nuke Europe over some rainbow flags. Now, picture that very same country displaying love letters to China on almost every single billboard in Moscow. Sounds like satire, right? Well, welcome to Putin's Russia, where irony died a long time ago and got replaced with state-sponsored delusion. We were told NATO was the devil. The European Union was the reincarnation of Satan, America was evil, but China is the wise, ancient dragon we should worship. Except that behind the dragon's smile are very sharp claws, and Russia's neck is already inside the jaws. Here's the twist. While Putin calls Xi Jinping his dearest friend, almost literal quote, and quotes him like Yoda for Slavs, the FSB, those guys who spy on everyone, they are in full panic mode. Because it turns out China is not just smiling, it is stealing behind Putin's back. Stealing Russian weapons research, luring away scientists with big paychecks, and quietly laying claim to parts of Russian territory even the Chinese maps are getting bolder. Amur, Vladivostok and beyond labeled already guess what as historically Chinese territories. Sounds awfully familiar, right? And yet Putin and I guess us, well, we keep smiling. So, let's walk through how Russia went from a paranoid security state afraid of everyone to a masochistic fangirl for an authoritarian superpower next door. This is not just bad foreign policy, this is geopolitical self-destruction. And the trigger finger belongs to the man who used to work in the very agency, which is now screaming about potential betrayal. Is he too blind or too busy to see it? Or is he pretending these are fake news and rumors spread by the West? Let's try to answer these questions in today's video. Back in the day when Putin still had the courtesy to pretend Russia was independent, China was treated with caution. Yes, both were authoritarian, but even the Soviet Union did not trust Mao Zedong. Remember the border clashes in the 1960s? Soviet troops lined the Amur River with machine guns, and everyone braced for a real war. Chinese communism was seen as wild, fanatical, unstable, the chaotic cousin who did not participate in family dinners and who apparently did not get the most recent memo. Now fast forward to today, Xi Jinping rewrites the Chinese constitution so he can rule for life. And instead of raising an eyebrow, Putin applauds. Not only applauds, he imitates. China builds concentration camps, Russia builds censorship laws. China bans dissent, Russia jails teenagers for memes. And then Putin goes a step further and starts quoting Xi's speeches like they are gospel, slapping his phrases on state TV like motivational posters in a failing business office building. But here is what the Kremlin will not say, at least on air. Chinese intelligence is now one of the biggest espionage threats inside Russia. They are not just listening, they are infiltrating. They have targeted top Russian aviation institutes, defense labs and research centers. They are trying to poach the same engineers who once helped build hypersonic missiles, such as Kinjal, and they are offering them triple the salary, no risk of being sent to the front lines, and no need to salute corrupt generals. It is not just theft, it is talent extraction. And the ones about to be stolen do not even see it as being kidnapped. They see it as a golden opportunity. Get more money, avoid the front lines. Pretty much win-win all around. Where are the disadvantages? Almost none. And the cherry on top, those shiny propaganda posters quoting Xi are paid for the taxpayer rubles. The very people being exploited are also funding the illusion of brotherhood. Putin is so desperate to have a strong ally on his side that he is ready to close his eyes on all the ambushes and backstabbing that happen now more and more frequently recently. But a desperate man is ready for desperate actions apparently. This has never changed. Another huge dependency of Russia on China is seen through the economy. Let's talk about this aspect in our next chapter. Let's talk numbers, because guess what? Numbers do not lie, even when the Kremlin does. Even though they do it pretty often. Before the war in Ukraine, Russia sold around 14% of its exports to China. Not insignificant, but manageable. 2 years later, that number doubled. Now, almost 33% of Russia's export economy depends on Beijing. And on the import side, way worse, even worse. Over half of everything Russia brings in, from smartphones to fertilizer, comes from, you guessed it, China. But flip the coin, what does China get out of this relationship? Around 3% of its exports go to Russia. For every $1 billion Russia gives, China barely notices. It is like handing your rent money to Elon Musk and expecting a thank you card every single month. Russia has become so irrelevant to Chinese economy that it could vanish tomorrow and Xi would not even lose his appetite over lunch. So why does Putin keep doing this then? Because he has no one else. Thanks to his brilliant quote-unquote denazification operation, Europe slammed the door shut. The US froze the assets and every yacht over $50 million. And even neutral countries stopped answering Putin's calls. That left only one option, once again China. Not because they're friends, but because China does not ask questions. You can murder opposition leaders, rig elections, occupy sovereign nations. Beijing doesn't care. Just keep the oil flowing and the rubles rolling. And that's exactly what Russia does. Putin turned the Russian economy into a gas station chained to one single wealthy customer. In 2023, 50% of all Russian oil exports went straight to China. That means if Xi sneezes, the Russian budget gets pneumonia, I don't know what else to say. And Putin, he's standing in the cold rain with a broken umbrella praying for more business. Knowing perfectly well at the same time that if somebody else is ready to offer China cheaper prices, Xi Jinping will just get Putin out of his life faster than Putin wanted to capture Kiev. With the only difference is that one person of this love equation is actually capable of doing it. Besides that, Putin's so-called friend also sees all the losses that Russia is suffering both on world's political arena and front lines in Ukraine. And trust me, those things, they do not go away unnoticed. We might forget about them next month, but the regime such as Xi Jinping's never forgets. Let's talk about it in our next chapter. While Russia plays army in Ukraine, sending conscripts to die for scorched ruins, the entire eastern flank is wide open. The same military that used to patrol the border with China is now buried in the mud of Bakhmut. Strategic missile units, naval personnel from the Pacific Fleet, elite troops from Kamchatka, all of them are either dead, dying, or so demoralized they are begging to be rotated out and never touch anything military related. You think Beijing once again is not watching this? Of course they do. The Russian Far East is a gold mine, timber, oil, gas, rare earth, and almost no people left to defend it. Entire towns are depopulating, infrastructure is decaying. Soldiers who should be protecting this vast region are instead guarding trenches in Ukraine from $300 Chinese-made FPV drones. The irony, right? Did you get it? Drones China sells to Russia by day, and then probably feeding the Ukrainian side a blueprint by night. Money is money, business is business, nothing personal, as always. It is not even a conspiracy theory, it is strategic chess. China does not need to fire a single shot, it just needs to wait. Every year, Russia grows weaker. Every year, its economy bleeds, its army thins, and its dependency on China tightens like a noose. And if Xi Jinping ever wakes up and decides he wants to send a peacekeeping quote-unquote mission to protect Chinese cultural heritage in the Russian Far East, well, there is not going to be army left to even stop him. Not because Russia could not defend itself, but because Putin gambled everything on Ukraine and he lost. And you think Xi will not find a good reason to justify why some parts of Russia are historically Chinese? Well, obviously it will not happen overnight, just like Putin did. It will take the Chinese government, regime and propaganda years to make its people believe those fairy tales. And who knows, maybe they can even convince the world, or at least some parts of it, about the necessity of potential special Chinese military operation. Because they saw how drastically Putin failed invading and not brainwashing anyone besides the people of Russia. So what's the result? Almost no one outside of Russia believes this invasion was justified. Learning from your mistakes is good, but learning from mistakes of other people is better. And surely, Chinese government is taking their notes daily as this fiasco in Ukraine unfolds. We usually guys laugh at the FSB. These are the guys who raid libraries, monitor Telegram chats and arrest students for wearing yellow and blue. But in this one bizarre case, they are actually, believe it or not, right. The FSB's China division has been raising alarms for years. Espionage, influence operations, economic blackmail, territorial ambitions, they have seen it all. And how did Putin respond? You guessed it, he ignored them. The man who once rose through the ranks of Soviet intelligence now dismisses his own agency like a disobedient dog. Because the truth is, Putin no longer works for the Russian state. He works for his own, single-person survival. And Xi Jinping is the only world leader who guarantees that. At least for now. Xi does not ask uncomfortable questions. He does not demand reforms. He does not care about Navalny or rigged elections or gulags. As long as Russia keeps selling cheap oil and does not embarrass him on the world stage, he is happy. That's all he needs. And that's all Putin needs. But here is the horrifying part. Russia's entire foreign trade, its energy sector, its military supply chain, all of it now depends on the one-sided friendship. If Xi Jinping pulls the plug, well, Russia collapses. Not gradually, but instantly. The West is gone. India is just window shopping. In North Korea, well, they're just sending cannon fodder, not credit lines, to say the least. Putin has boxed himself into a corner with billion Chinese fingers slowly tightening around his neck. He feels the grip, but is not willing to do anything about it. It's between instant termination or spreading it for years to come. And as always, Putin thinks he will come up with some sort of plan later. Some miracle will happen. Putin will outweigh everyone and all his friends and enemies will be replaced, with him being the only one last standing. But will it happen this time though? That is the question. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, there are links down below, for example, Patreon and PayPal and everything pretty much. You can see those episodes in early access. There is also an additional chapter in the end of each episode. The link is down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe